Anybody interested in grabbing a couple of burgers and hitting the cemetery? That's the kind of irreverence that the main character of the next film is all about, at least for a while. And that would be the Royal Tenenbaums. Now, Wes Anderson's work is nothing if not highly contrived. A characteristic sure to be polarising, and one perhaps most fully exemplified by the Royal Tenenbaums from 2001. The story of our dysfunctional family of overachievers. Patriarch Royal Tenenbaum, Gene Hackman, and matriarch Ethelene Tenenbaum, Angelica Houston, have 3 children. Financial wizard Chaz, played as an adult by Ben Stiller, Tennessee's Richie, Luke Wilson, and adopted, critically acclaimed playwright Margot, Gwyneth Paltrow. Due to Royal's extramarital dalliances, the Tenenbaum parents separate, and the children are largely raised by the mother in the family home, with Royal's influence only being seen rarely, and only to demonstrate what a woefully inadequate father he is. Whether due to his influence, or lack thereof, or the pressures of achieving so highly at such a young age, the Tenenbaum children are all varying degrees of cussed up as adults, and all involved are stuck firmly in the past, specifically the 70s, as demonstrated visually by their clothing and other things, such as the cars and decor never changing in the contemporary period. And all save Chaz with their glory years firmly in the past, in the rearview mirror. After having lived for years in a hotel, former lawyer Royal is now out of money and is forced to seek new accommodation. The fine, upstanding fellow tries to buy himself some time by claiming to his family that he is dying, and moving into the family residence with his estranged wife. This coincides with the return home of Chaz, struggling to cope in the aftermath of his wife's death. Margot, who is experiencing difficulties in her marriage to Bill Murray's Dr. Raleigh Sinclair, and Richie, who returns for Royal's sake but also happens to be in love with his adoptive sister. Complicating this further is Ethelene's relationship with Danny Glover's Kofi Annan-styled Henry. At first, Royal is only looking out for himself, as he is wont to do, but he eventually comes to realise that his family is important to him, and he tries to make amends and help where he can, while the rest of the family come to various degrees of epiphany or resolution. The Royal Tenenbaums is perhaps a little less funny than much of Anderson's other work, and has a stronger sense of melancholy throughout, rather than reserving it, for the most part, for the end. But it has the same pervasive warmth for its characters, and is probably the strongest example of another of Anderson's traits, which is his redemptive approach to his characters' wrongdoings. A kind of hopeful trademark or trait that marks out his stories in a way that sets them apart from the much more common punishment and conviction style. The acting in Tenenbaums is superb, with Gwyneth Paltrow and Luke Wilson in particular giving understated, nuanced yet affecting performances, and the acting in general anchored by the heft of Angelica Houston and Gene Hackman. Ben Stiller is perhaps the odd one out here, as, while it is possible for him to give a lower key performance, probably exemplified most well in The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, he still comes across as very well Ben Stiller. It's a relatively minor gripe though. If there's a singular big issue I take with the Royal Tenenbaums, it's with Alec Baldwin's narration, which, as in the majority of cases, is simply unnecessary. On occasions the device works, of course. Indeed, Anderson himself employed it in a way that fits with the structure in the Grand Budapest Hotel, but while the style of Tenenbaums is somewhere between stage play and novel, the narration is unnecessary and has the added problem of it seeming like Baldwin is trying to sound like Gene Hackman, which he, in fact, was. As with most of Wes Anderson's work, though, it is exquisitely crafted and detailed and maintains the aesthetic throughout. There's also plenty of potential to get really deep in this film, perhaps more than a lot of his others. And there's plenty of more subtle references too, because he's very careful about how he plans things. And as an example, when asked by Ben Stiller why Chaz and his sons wear their distinctive red Adidas tracksuits throughout the film, Anderson explained to him it was because red signified danger, a preoccupation of Chaz's, and would also allow him to easily spot his children. Yet in subsequent interviews explained that he always just imagined them in red Adidas tracksuits. However, I I'm struck, this time in particular, by the fact that they wear Adidas tracksuits with Puma trainers. Now, I think most people, if they notice that at all, would think, and? But Puma and Adidas were companies famously founded by warring brothers. And in the city of Herzogenaurach in Germany, home of both businesses, you were either an Adidas family or a Puma family. And no one, until one brave mayor at least, would be seen wearing both.
Like at the same time? Like
yes.
one shoe Puma, one shoe Adidas?
That's it. Now, I could be reading too much into that, but it does seem to be another reference to unresolved familial conflict and the long-term consequences.
In this case, two highly successful sportswear companies.
Well, Chaz is really highly successful. He's got lots of money and a nice house. So, Royal Tenenbaums isn't my favourite of Anderson's works, but it is a delight nonetheless.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember exactly what happened with this, because I think the first time I saw it was when I ordered the DVD, because it's one of my few remaining Region 1 DVDs, which been back in the days when you bought shiny discs as were a thing. So I remember being quite eager to watch it, but didn't like it all that much in my first viewing, and I'm not really sure I've actually been to it since. And it was interesting coming back to it, and I think I found a lot more to appreciate it in this time round. I suspect I was looking for something a bit funnier on that first viewing and didn't get it. But knowing that going in certainly forewarns you a little bit. If Rushmore has a sort of meaner edge to it in places, then this Royal Tenenbaums doesn't. It has things that should theoretically be quite mean, like faking having cancer, but somehow just isn't. As you say, it does give them an understanding, and sort of the characters always have an opportunity for redemption, and most of the time they seem to play that out. And I think it's a terrific ensemble performance, as you say. Isn't it interesting to see Gwyneth Paltrow being a good actor and not selling twaddle on the internet to gullible morons? That's always good.
Magical stones and whatnot.
Yes. Yes. This, I think, more than anything else, was the one film I was thinking of where it's pointing out a lot of things without really giving Anderson's chapter and verse on any one thing in particular. So it is bouncing about between various aspects of family relationships, and depending on your particular circumstances or particular proclivities, you'll probably pick up more on one strand of it than the other and run with that for analysis. But I think it's doing a good job of just presenting all that as a buffet that you can eavesdrop in on and pick and choose from without really committing to any one particular thread of it. Of course, I suppose the main thing is just reconciliation with father figures, but how deep it goes into that, I'm not quite sure it actually really gets anywhere with it. I mean, it's doing a lot of entertaining things along the way. That's probably the main thing. It's certainly the main takeaway for enjoying it. I think, like yourself, it's not my favourite Anderson film. I wonder if a lot of people watch this, because if I recall correctly, this might have been the first one that was pushed quite heavily by a studio on release. Not that the other ones were particularly small films, I guess, given the scope of things, but this was the first one that was pushed, probably because of the name recognition of the cast. And I suspect a lot of people didn't quite know what to make of it. I mean, I certainly didn't, and I had some experience with Wes Anderson films before then. So perhaps not a great starting point, but it's a rewarding film to watch. Really does showcase some of the theatrical staging elements that Anderson returns to, as you point out, and it's a very interesting looking film. The colour palettes are just so particular, and does give it a very distinctive style that you may come to envisage as being a bit more Anderson-y in future. But yeah, it's not the single most enjoyable film, but it's perhaps his most complicated one, and definitely deserves to be looked at in that regard.
Yeah, I think so. You mentioned about like the father stuff. I mean, I'm not really giving any resolution to that, but maybe that says something in and of itself.
Yeah.
Because a lot of his films, there's clearly a parenthood in general and fatherhood in particular, whether it's an absent father or an inadequate father or somebody going to be a father, and it comes up so often, but doesn't always have an answer, and maybe that's the point.
Yeah. Which is maybe a bit more reflective of real life. I mean, how it's very rare for any situation to be tied up nicely in a bow and delivered in 90 minutes, isn't it? So,
yes, I don't know. Just as you mentioned 90 minutes there, this is actually one of the few Wes Anderson films that isn't. This one's like an hour 50, more or less, I think. But yeah, he's fairly consistently on the 90-minute mark or not far off of it.
Yeah.
Which I find quite refreshing in this age where films are 2.5 hours with no particular need to be.
Yes.
He restrains himself. I mean, he's been accused of being self-indulgent in a lot of ways, but I might argue that silly running time is not one of them.
Yeah.
Which is nice. So